Long ago, in a place covered in white snow for many months of the year, lived a scientist named David Mech. This was Minnesota, a state in the northern part of America, known for its deep forests and icy lakes. David wasn't just any scientist. He was a biologist, someone who studied living things. But out of all the amazing creatures in the world, David loved wolves the most. He spent most of his time thinking about them, reading about them, and most importantly, watching them. David wasn't afraid of the cold or the quiet of the wilderness. In fact, he loved it. He would bundle up in thick coats and hats, his breath making little clouds in the frosty air. For years, he dedicated his life to understanding these wild, gray animals. He wanted to know how they lived, what they ate, how they played, and how they raised their pups. He felt a deep connection to the wolves, seeing them as smart and important parts of nature. He would often spend days, sometimes even weeks, out in the snowy woods, patiently observing the wolf packs. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. He used special tools like binoculars to see them from far away, making sure not to disturb their natural lives. Sometimes, he would even fly in a small plane high above the trees to get a better look at where the wolves roamed. He learned to read their tracks in the snow and understand their howls that echoed through the silent forests. David truly believed that the more we understood wolves, the more we would understand about nature itself. He felt lucky to be able to spend his life learning from such amazing creatures. David's love for wolves wasn't just a hobby. It was his life's work. For many, many years, he spent his days and nights learning everything he could about them. He watched how wolf pups tumbled and played in the dens, learning important hunting skills from their parents. He saw how the adult wolves worked together, a true team, to find food and protect their territory. Their howls, which some people found scary, David found beautiful and full of meaning. He learned that each howl could mean different things: a call to gather, a warning to other animals, or just a way for the pack to talk to each other across the vast wilderness. He learned about their amazing sense of smell, how they could sniff out prey from far away, even under the snow. He also saw how clever they were, sometimes waiting patiently for hours for the perfect moment to catch a meal. David understood that wolves weren't just simple hunters. They were smart, had strong family bonds, and played a very important part in keeping the forest healthy. By eating weaker or sick animals, they helped the stronger ones survive and thrive. Through countless hours of patient watching, David became a true expert on wolves. He knew their habits, their favorite places to rest, and the routes they took through the snowy woods. He wrote many books and papers about his discoveries, sharing his knowledge with others around the world. He wanted everyone to understand that wolves were not mean or bad, but important, wild creatures that deserved respect and protection. His years of dedication made him one of the most respected wolf scientists in the whole world. After countless days spent on the ground and many hours in the air, David thought he had seen everything a wolf pack could do. He knew their patterns, their hunting grounds, and even the personalities of some individual wolves. But one crisp winter morning, as he flew his small, single-engine plane over a particularly wild and snowy part of Minnesota, something truly unexpected caught his eye. The engine hummed steadily as David peered down, his gaze sweeping over the endless, white blanket of snow dotted with dark green trees. He was looking for wolf tracks, or perhaps a glimpse of a pack moving through the forest. Suddenly, a cluster of dark shapes stood out against the white. It was a group of wolves, and they were not moving as he expected. Instead of chasing something or resting in a sun-drenched spot, they seemed to be gathered in a tight circle. David circled his plane lower, his heart beginning to beat a little faster with curiosity. From his high vantage point, he could tell something was different. The wolves weren't just standing together. They were focused on something in the middle of their group. It wasn't a fresh kill, which would have been a common sight. This looked different. He had never seen wolves behave quite like this before. This strange sight made him forget everything else he was looking for. He knew he had to get a closer look at what was happening below. As David brought his plane down even lower, closer to the treetops, the mystery of the wolf gathering began to clear, but only a little. What he saw next made his jaw drop. In the middle of the circle of wolves, there lay a very large animal. It was clearly a moose, one of the biggest animals in the forest, with long legs and a big snout. Now, David had seen wolves with moose many times before. Usually, when wolves found a moose, especially in winter when food was scarce, it meant one thing: a hunt. Wolves are natural predators, and moose are often their prey. But this time, something was very, very different. The wolves were not trying to attack the moose. They weren't circling it like hunters ready to pounce. They weren't even nipping at its heels or trying to scare it. Instead, the wolves were simply gathered around the huge creature, almost as if they were watching over it. Their posture was calm, not aggressive. Some of them lay down in the snow nearby, while others stood alert, looking outwards, not at the moose itself. It was as if they were guarding it, rather than preparing to eat it. This behavior completely confused David. His years of studying wolves had taught him their ways, but this scene didn't fit any of his knowledge. He scratched his head, wondering what in the world was going on. Why would a pack of hungry wolves be so close to such a big meal and not even try to touch it? David continued to circle his plane, his eyes glued to the scene below. What he witnessed next made the puzzle even more confusing. It wasn't just that the wolves weren't attacking the moose. They were actively protecting it. A curious coyote, drawn by the smell of a large animal, trotted cautiously towards the group. But before it could get too close, one of the wolves, a big male with dark fur, stood up and let out a low growl. The coyote, sensing danger, quickly turned and ran away. Another time, a flock of crows landed on a nearby tree, cawing loudly, perhaps hoping for an easy meal. But the wolves shifted their positions, looking up at the birds with sharp, warning gazes. The crows, understanding the message, soon flew off. It was clear as day. The wolves were acting like guards. They positioned themselves around the moose, always facing outwards, their ears swiveling to catch any sound, their noses twitching to catch any scent of another creature approaching. This was not typical wolf behavior. Wolves usually protect their territory or their pups, not a large prey animal they haven't even killed. David had seen wolves hunt, and he had seen them feed. This was neither. This was something entirely new, something that challenged everything he thought he knew about these wild animals. He watched in amazement, taking notes and sketching the scene in his small notebook. The more he observed, the more he realized that these wolves were seriously committed to keeping other animals away from the moose. It was a mystery wrapped in a riddle, and David was determined to solve it. The sight of the wolves acting as guards, rather than hunters, was truly remarkable. David knew he needed to get an even clearer picture. He carefully flew his plane in wide circles, slowly getting lower and closer, trying to get the best view without scaring the animals. As he swooped in, the details became sharper. He could now clearly see the large animal at the center of the wolf pack. It was indeed a moose, a full-grown one, lying still in the deep snow. But what struck David most was its appearance. This wasn't a strong, healthy moose ready to stand its ground against a wolf attack. Its fur looked dull and matted, not shiny and thick as it should be in winter. Its breathing was shallow and slow, and its head rested low in the snow, barely moving. It looked incredibly tired, weak, and very, very sick. David's mind raced. A sick or injured animal was usually an easy target for wolves. It was nature's way. But here these wolves were doing the opposite. They weren't taking advantage of its weakness, they were shielding it. He could see how frail the moose was, how it struggled even to lift its head a little. It seemed to be in its last moments. This new detail made the wolf's behavior even more puzzling and deeply interesting. Why would fierce predators dedicate themselves to protecting an animal that was clearly dying, and by all accounts should be their next meal? This was a puzzle David couldn't ignore. The sight of the weak, dying moose and the protective wolves truly scrambled David's understanding of nature. Every book he'd read, every observation he'd made over decades, pointed to one truth. Wolves hunted moose, especially a moose as vulnerable as this one. It was the natural order, the way predators survived and kept prey populations healthy. A sick animal was usually a gift from nature, an easy meal that saved the pack from a difficult hunt. He kept asking himself, why aren't they attacking? Why aren't they trying to eat it? It simply didn't make sense. Wolves are powerful hunters, known for their teamwork and their sharp instincts. They would usually test a weak animal, try to bring it down, and then share the feast. But these wolves were doing none of that. They weren't even showing hunger. Their focus was entirely on keeping other animals away, not on consuming the moose themselves. David knew that wolves sometimes waited for an animal to die before eating it, especially if it was very large and dangerous. But even then, they would still be focused on the meal, perhaps circling closer, their eyes fixed on the prey with anticipation. These wolves seemed to be completely uninterested in the moose as food. It was as if their mission was just to guard it, no matter what. This puzzling behavior made David feel like he was seeing a brand new chapter in the Book of Wolves, one he had never imagined existed. His curiosity grew stronger with every passing moment. The mystery of the guarding wolves and the dying moose became David's sole focus. He knew he couldn't just fly away and forget this incredible sight. Day after day, he returned to the spot, either by plane or sometimes on skis, always keeping a respectful distance. He wanted to understand this strange behavior, even if it meant braving the harsh Minnesota winter for longer than usual. And every single time David returned, the wolves were still there. They didn't leave the moose's side. Through the biting winds and falling snow, they remained steadfast. He saw them take turns resting, some lying down while others stood alert, their eyes scanning the horizon. When one wolf needed to stretch its legs or perhaps find a quick drink of water, another would immediately take its place as a sentinel. It was a silent, patient vigil. The moose, meanwhile, grew weaker. It barely moved now, its breathing almost too faint to see. Yet, the wolves did not change their behavior. They continued to act as silent protectors, forming a living barrier around the dying animal. David watched as the sun rose and set, painting the snowy landscape with hues of pink and orange, then deep blue. He saw the stars come out, shining brightly over the unchanging scene. The wolves were there through it all. This wasn't a quick moment of unusual behavior. It was a sustained, dedicated effort by the entire pack. It showed a deep, unexplainable commitment that fascinated David more than any other wolf behavior he had ever witnessed. The wolves' unwavering presence beside the moose was already astonishing. But David observed their protective actions even more closely. It wasn't just a passive guarding. It was an active defense against any other creature that dared to approach. Over the days, he witnessed several instances of this fierce protection. A lone coyote, thin and hungry in the harsh winter, crept through the trees, its eyes fixed on the weak moose. It likely smelled an easy meal, but as it got within a certain distance, a wolf, usually the alpha male, would rise to its feet. It wouldn't rush forward in a full attack, but its stance, a low growl rumbling in its chest, and a direct, unblinking stare were enough. The coyote, understanding the clear warning, would tuck its tail and slink away, knowing better than to challenge a full wolf pack. Even bolder creatures, like a small group of ravens, were not allowed near. Ravens are smart birds that often follow predators, hoping to scavenge leftovers. They circled above, cawing loudly, then tried to land on branches close to the moose. But the wolves would look up, some barking short, sharp barks, and the ravens would fly off, their hopes of a free meal dashed. It was clear that the wolves were not just waiting. They were actively ensuring that nothing else interfered with the dying moose. This consistent defense against other animals cemented David's belief that their behavior was indeed one of protection, a truly baffling act in the wild. The more David watched, the more his mind buzzed with questions. This behavior was so far removed from what he, and indeed the entire scientific community, understood about wolves. Wolves were efficient hunters, driven by hunger and the need to feed their pack. They were not known for mercy or for protecting prey animals, especially one that was clearly on the brink of death. He thought about all the books he had read, all the studies he had conducted, and all the films he had seen of wolves in the wild. None of them showed anything like this. This wasn't a mother wolf protecting her pups. It was a pack protecting a moose. It was like seeing a lion guarding a zebra instead of hunting it. It just didn't fit the picture. This extraordinary scene made David incredibly curious. He felt like he was on the edge of a new discovery, something that could change how everyone thought about wolves, and perhaps even about the natural world itself. What was the reason behind this unexpected act of protection? Was it something he had never considered before? Was there a deeper meaning to this unusual gathering? He felt a strong pull to uncover the truth, to understand why these wolves were acting in such a profoundly different way. His scientific mind, trained to observe and analyze, was now completely captivated by this baffling mystery in the snowy wilderness. As David wrestled with the strange sight, he tried to think of all possible explanations for the wolves' actions. One thought that briefly crossed his mind was that maybe the moose, despite its apparent weakness, was still too big and strong for the wolf pack to take down. Moose are huge animals, and even a sick one can deliver a powerful kick. Perhaps the wolves were waiting for it to die naturally to avoid a dangerous fight. But then David looked closer at the moose. From his vantage point, he could clearly see how frail it was. Its body was thin, its legs looked wobbly, and it lay almost completely still. It wasn't just weak. It was clearly at the very end of its life. Any experienced wolf pack, especially a healthy one like this, would typically have no trouble taking down such a vulnerable animal. A quick, coordinated attack would bring it down easily, providing a much-needed meal in the lean winter months. So the idea that the moose was too tough for them quickly faded from David's mind. It just didn't fit what he was seeing. The wolves weren't acting cautious, They were acting protective. They weren't conserving energy for a difficult hunt. They were spending energy chasing away scavengers. The moose was not a threat. It was barely alive. This made the mystery even deeper. If it wasn't about the moose's strength, then what could possibly be the reason for such a unique and puzzling act of guardianship? David felt more perplexed than ever. After days of careful watching, ruling out every other explanation, a new daring idea began to form in David's mind. It was an idea so surprising, so against everything he had been taught, that it felt almost impossible. Yet with every passing hour, every chased-away coyote, every silent moment of vigil from the wolves, this idea grew stronger. David started to believe that the wolves were not just guarding the moose. They were actively protecting it. He thought about the way they positioned themselves, always facing outwards, alert to any threat. He remembered the low growls and the warning barks that sent other animals scurrying away. These weren't the actions of a pack waiting for a meal. These were the actions of guardians. They weren't just keeping other animals from the moose. They were keeping them away from it, almost like a shield. It was a powerful thought, to think that these fierce predators, known for their hunting prowess, could show such an unexpected form of care for a dying prey animal. It challenged the very core of what predator and prey meant. David felt a thrill of discovery mixed with a deep sense of wonder. If this was true, it would mean that wolves had a much more complex and surprising inner world than anyone had ever imagined. He had to keep watching, to see if his incredible new theory would prove to be true. This possibility changed everything for him. The thought that the wolves were actively protecting the moose sparked a whole new set of questions for David. If they were protecting it, why? What could make this particular sick, dying moose so special or important to a pack of wolves? Was there something unique about this animal that David couldn't see from his plane? He considered different possibilities. Could it be a moose that had, at some point, helped one of the wolves? Perhaps it was a young moose they had encountered before, or one that had somehow interacted with the pack in a non-threatening way. But wolves and moose usually have a very clear predator-prey relationship. Friendly encounters were almost unheard of. Maybe, David thought, the wolves sensed something about the moose that was beyond human understanding. Animals in the wild often have keen instincts. Did they know it was a very old moose, or one that had played a special role in the moose community? It was hard to imagine, as wolves generally don't show such respect for their prey. Yet, their behavior was so deliberate, so consistent, that it had to be for a reason. David wondered if the wolves possessed a kind of wisdom he hadn't yet discovered, a deeper connection to the forest and its creatures that allowed them to act in such an extraordinary way. The idea that animals could have such complex motivations was truly mind-boggling. Armed with his extraordinary observations and a new, bold theory, David felt a strong urge to share what he was witnessing. He contacted fellow scientists, other biologists, and wolf experts, eager to discuss this unprecedented behavior. He described the sick moose, the unwavering wolf guard, and the active chasing away of other predators. He laid out all the details, hoping they would be as amazed and curious as he was. But to his surprise, many of them found it very hard to believe. Wolves protecting a moose? That's impossible, David, some would say. Are you sure you're not mistaken? Perhaps they're just waiting for it to die, keeping other scavengers away from their future meal. Others suggested he might have misunderstood what he was seeing, or that it was a very rare, one-time oddity, not a true protective act. David understood why they were skeptical. His observations truly defied common knowledge about wolves. It went against decades of established science. It was like saying cats could fly. Still, David was a respected scientist with years of experience, and he knew what he was seeing. He didn't get angry. He just knew he had to keep gathering more proof. Their doubts only strengthened his resolve. He knew he had to keep watching, keep learning, and trust his own eyes and his deep understanding of wolf behavior. He was witnessing something truly special, and he wouldn't let skepticism stop him from uncovering its truth. The doubts from his fellow scientists didn't discourage David. They only fueled his determination. He knew in his heart that what he was seeing was real and important. So, he kept watching. The days grew shorter, and the harsh Minnesota winter tightened its grip. More snow fell, blanketing the forest in an even deeper layer of white. The temperatures dropped, making every breath a frosty cloud. But David didn't let the cold stop him. He dressed in extra layers, making sure his face was covered to protect against the biting wind. He flew his plane, sometimes in blustery conditions, or trekked on skis through the quiet, snow-laden woods. Each time, he approached the site with the same quiet respect, careful not to disturb the scene below. He would set up his telescope or binoculars and observe for hours, sometimes until the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with icy colors. He watched as the snow piled up around the moose, making it look even smaller and more fragile. The wolves, however, seemed unaffected by the worsening weather. They continued their watchful guard, their thick fur coats protecting them from the bitter cold. They were a living testament to patience and commitment in the face of nature's challenges. David shivered sometimes, but his mind was too busy observing and recording to truly feel the chill. He knew he was witnessing something truly special, something that would change the way people understood wolves forever. He would not give up until he understood why. Through biting winds and relentless snow, the wolves never broke their watch. David continued his daily trips, each time expecting to find the scene changed, but it never was. The pack remained, a circle of silent, watchful guardians around the ever-weakening moose. It was a commitment that amazed David, a patience he had rarely seen in the wild, especially from predators. He noticed how they managed their own needs. Some wolves would briefly leave the circle, perhaps to drink from a hidden stream or find a sheltered spot for a quick rest. But another would always fill their place immediately. The moose was never left unprotected. It was a perfectly coordinated effort, showing the strong bond and understanding within the pack. They seemed to take turns, ensuring constant vigilance. The moose lay almost completely still now, a silent, fragile presence in the snow. Yet, the wolves did not waver. They didn't show signs of hunger or impatience, only a quiet resolve. Their eyes remained alert, their bodies ready to spring into action if another animal dared to intrude. It was a long, cold vigil, stretching from days into more than a week. David knew that such dedication meant something truly profound. It was not mere instinct driving them. It was something deeper, something he was still striving to understand. The wolves' unwavering presence was a powerful testament to their mysterious mission. After more than a week of relentless watching, a week filled with cold winds and quiet awe, David started his daily flight. He flew towards the familiar spot, expecting to see the same scene. The frail moose nestled in the snow, surrounded by its silent, furry guards. But as he approached, a sudden sense of emptiness washed over him. He circled the area, his eyes searching frantically. The large, still form of the moose was gone. The dark shapes of the wolves were gone too. The patch of snow where the incredible vigil had taken place was now empty, disturbed only by the patterns of fresh snowfall and the natural curves of the land. It was as if the entire extraordinary scene had simply vanished overnight, leaving no trace. David flew lower, making several passes over the spot just to be sure. His heart thumped with a mix of disappointment and a renewed surge of curiosity. Where had they gone? What had finally happened to the sick moose? And why had the wolves left so suddenly and completely? The silence of the empty snow seemed to hold the answers, but they were hidden from his sight. The long, patient watch had come to an end, not with a dramatic conclusion, but with a quiet disappearance. David knew he had to land and investigate on foot. The mystery was far from over. Landing his plane a safe distance away, David grabbed his gear and set out on skis, his mind racing with questions. He approached the spot where the moose and wolves had been, his eyes sharply scanning the snow. As an experienced tracker, he knew exactly what to look for. If the wolves had finally killed the moose, there would be clear signs. He expected to see bloodstains on the snow, perhaps fur ripped from the moose's hide, or deep gouges in the snow from a struggle. He also expected to find remains of the moose's body, as even a pack of wolves wouldn't eat an entire animal as large as a moose in one night. But as he slowly skied over the area, carefully examining every patch of snow, he found nothing. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no scattered fur, no bones. The snow, though disturbed by past wolf and moose prints, was pristine in the way that indicated no violent end. It looked as if the moose had simply lain there, and then, at some point, it and the wolves had simply vanished without a trace of conflict. This lack of evidence was astonishing. It meant that the wolves had not killed the moose. If they had, there would surely be a messy scene, even in the deepest snow. This finding supported David's daring theory even more. The wolves had indeed been protecting it, not waiting to eat it. The mystery was deepening in a truly unexpected way. The absence of any struggle or kill site was the final, crucial piece of the puzzle for David. As he stood in the quiet, empty clearing, the cold air biting at his nose, a profound realization washed over him. The wolves had not killed the moose. They hadn't been waiting for it to die to claim it as their meal. No, their purpose had been entirely different. David understood then. The wolves had stayed with the sick moose until its very last breath. They had guarded it, not from themselves, but from other dangers in the forest. They had been its silent companions and protectors as it slowly faded away. They had ensured that the moose passed away peacefully, undisturbed by scavengers or other hungry animals seeking an easy target. This realization was a moment of deep wonder for David. It completely overturned his previous understanding of wolf behavior. He had always seen wolves as efficient, sometimes brutal, hunters driven by survival. But this act of guarding, of patiently standing vigil over a dying creature without any intent to consume it, showed a side of wolves he had never imagined. It spoke of a complex understanding, perhaps even a form of compassion, that he had never thought possible in the wild. The wolves had shown him a beautiful, unexpected truth about nature. Standing in the silent, empty clearing, David replayed everything he had seen. The wolves' patient vigil, their active defense against scavengers, and now, the complete lack of any kill site. It all pointed to one powerful conclusion. The wolves had not been protecting the moose as a future meal. They weren't just keeping other animals away so they could have the carcass all to themselves later. No, their reasons had to be much deeper, much more complex. This wasn't about hunger or survival in the usual sense. If it were, they would have eaten the moose after it passed away. The fact that they had simply left, leaving no trace of a feast, meant their protective act had a different, perhaps even mysterious purpose. David pondered what that purpose could be. It challenged his entire understanding of the predator-prey relationship. It wasn't about a lion eating a zebra. It was about a lion somehow caring for a zebra. He thought about the wolves' intelligence, their pack loyalty. Could this loyalty extend beyond their own kind? Was it a form of respect for a fellow creature of the forest, even one that was typically their prey? The idea was almost unbelievable, yet the evidence was right there in the undisturbed snow. David was convinced that the wolves were driven by something beyond simple instinct, something that spoke to a hidden depth in their wild hearts. He felt like he was peering into a secret world, one that held lessons for all of humanity. As David stood in the quiet, empty clearing, the grand puzzle of the wolves' behavior began to piece together. He now firmly believed they weren't protecting the moose for food, but for something else entirely. A new thought entered his mind, one that brought a strange sense of empathy to the wild scene. Perhaps the wolves were protecting the moose from a painful, drawn-out death at the hands of other, less efficient predators. He pictured the sick moose, weak and unable to defend itself. If left alone, it would eventually be found by scavengers like coyotes or even ravens, which might begin to feed on it while it was still alive. It would be a slow, agonizing end. But with the wolves acting as guards, chasing away all other animals, the moose was allowed to die peacefully, without being harassed or attacked in its final moments. This idea resonated deeply with David. It spoke of a kind of unspoken understanding in nature, a respect for life even from a predator. It wasn't about friendship or kindness in a human way, but about ensuring a natural, dignified end. The wolves, by keeping others away, were allowing the moose to simply fade away into the snowy landscape. It was a powerful thought, suggesting that even in the wild, there could be a silent agreement, a form of natural compassion that most people never imagined. David felt a profound awe for the wolves and their unexpected role. While the idea of the wolves protecting the moose from a painful end felt right, David's scientific mind also considered another fascinating possibility. What if the wolves weren't just showing a kind of wild compassion, but were actually learning? Perhaps this unusual situation was teaching them a new kind of animal behavior, something that would help their pack in the future. Wolves are very smart animals, and they learn from experience. Maybe this long vigil was a lesson for the younger wolves in the pack. It could be a way for them to understand the cycle of life and death in the forest in a new way. They might be learning about patience, about the different roles animals play, or even about how to manage territory in a way that wasn't just about hunting. David thought about how complex animal societies can be. Animals don't just act on instinct. They can adapt, learn, and even teach each other. This whole event, the patient waiting, the active guarding, the eventual peaceful departure, could be a shared learning experience for the entire wolf pack. It might be a new strategy they were developing, a way to interact with their environment that was more complex than simply predator and prey. This idea that he was witnessing a new chapter in wolf evolution was just as exciting as the thought of their compassion. David knew that either way, this event was a truly extraordinary discovery. The amazing event in the snowy forest did more than just add a new observation to David's long career. It completely changed how he thought about wolves. Before this, He saw them through the lens of a scientist, understanding their biology, their role as predators, and their social structures. He respected their intelligence and their place in the ecosystem. But what he had just witnessed added a whole new layer to his understanding. It wasn't just about facts and figures anymore. It was about something deeper, something that touched on feelings and complex choices. The wolf's patient, protective vigil over the dying moose showed him that these animals were capable of behaviors that went far beyond simple instinct. They weren't just machines of survival. They had a hidden depth, a capacity for actions that seemed almost empathetic or wise. This experience opened David's eyes to a richer, more mysterious side of nature. It made him question all the clear lines he had drawn between predator and prey, between instinct and something more profound. He realized that even after decades of study, the wild still held incredible secrets, and that animals, especially wolves, were far more complex than humans often gave them credit for. His view of them shifted from simply understanding their actions to truly appreciating their intricate inner lives. This event was a turning point in his scientific journey. The profound shift in David's understanding after witnessing the wolf's vigil was immense. He had spent his life studying them as predators, as efficient parts of the food chain. But this event taught him that wolves were much more than just hunters. They were incredibly complex creatures, full of surprises. He realized that their actions weren't always driven by simple needs like hunger or the urge to reproduce. There could be deeper motivations, perhaps even a form of instinctual respect or a learned behavior that went beyond typical survival tactics. The wolves had shown a side of themselves that was patient, dedicated, and even what some might call noble. They had displayed a kind of social complexity that was rarely attributed to wild animals, especially in their interactions with other species. This experience taught David that nature holds many secrets, and that even the most studied animals can still surprise us. Wolves, with their fierce reputation, had shown an unexpected gentleness in their long watch over the dying moose. It was a powerful lesson that encouraged David to look beyond what was commonly known, and to always be open to new discoveries, no matter how unbelievable they might seem at first. He now saw wolves not just as magnificent wild animals, but as beings with rich, mysterious inner lives, capable of truly astonishing acts. With his new, deeper understanding, David knew he had to share his story again, but this time with the full weight of his complete observations. He carefully wrote down every detail, from the initial sighting to the lack of a kill site, and his conclusions about the wolves' true intentions. He presented his findings at scientific conferences and published them in important journals. At first, some scientists still held on to their doubts. It was a big change from what they had always believed. But David's evidence was strong. He showed them his detailed notes, his maps of the area, and his consistent observations. Slowly, surely, other scientists began to listen. They started to see the logic in his incredible story. As more and more people heard about the wolves who protected a dying moose, a new way of thinking about these animals began to spread. David's story helped other scientists realize that wolves weren't just the fierce, instinct-driven hunters they were often thought to be. It showed them that wolves could be complex, surprising, and capable of actions that might be called compassionate or even respectful. This changed how many in the scientific world looked at wolves, inspiring them to study these animals with a new kind of curiosity and a more open mind. David had not only made a discovery, he had helped shift an entire way of thinking. David's groundbreaking discovery wasn't just about wolves. It was a powerful reminder that nature itself holds countless mysteries. His experience with the protective wolf pack showed everyone that even in places we think we know well, like the forests of Minnesota, there are still amazing secrets waiting to be found. For a long time, people thought they understood how wolves behaved. They were seen as wild, cunning hunters. But this single event showed that the wild world is much more complex and surprising than we often imagine. It proved that animals can have reasons for their actions that we don't yet understand. Reasons that go beyond simple hunger or fear. This helped scientists and nature lovers everywhere remember to always keep an open mind. It taught them that true learning means always being curious, always observing closely, and always being ready for nature to show us something new and unexpected. David's discovery was like opening a secret door to a deeper understanding of the natural world, showing that there's so much more to learn about the intricate lives of animals and the wisdom of the wild. It was a humble reminder that even the most expert eyes can still be surprised by the wonders around us. Even after the dust settled and the scientific community began to accept his amazing findings, David Mech never stopped studying wolves. The event with the protective pack and the moose became a guiding light for him. It was a constant reminder that there was always more to learn, more to observe, and more to understand about the secret lives of animals. He continued his research in the snowy lands of Minnesota. But now his eyes were even more open. He looked for subtle clues, for unexpected behaviors, and for anything that challenged what he thought he already knew. Every howl, every track in the snow, every interaction between wolves and other animals seemed to hold a deeper meaning after that incredible winter. The image of that particular pack, silently guarding the dying moose, stayed with him. It wasn't just a memory. It was a lesson etched into his heart. It taught him the importance of humility in science, of being ready to be surprised by nature's wisdom. He carried that experience with him in all his future work, allowing it to shape his questions and inspire his studies. The wolves had not only given him a story to tell, but a new way to see the world. The amazing experience with the wolves and the moose left a lasting mark on David's mind, far beyond just adding a new fact to his knowledge. It taught him a very important lesson: always look deeper. Before this, he had a clear picture of how animals behaved, based on years of study and accepted science. But this one event shattered those clear lines. It showed him that what we think we know about animals might only be a small part of the truth. There are hidden layers, unexpected feelings, and complex reasons behind their actions that we might never guess. This made David question everything. He learned not to take anything for granted, to always be ready for animals to surprise him, and to challenge old ideas with new observations. This lesson made him an even better scientist. He stopped looking for answers that fit his old ideas and started looking for what was truly happening, no matter how strange or unbelievable it seemed. He realized that animals, even fierce predators, have rich inner lives that are still a mystery to us. The event made him a more curious and humble observer of the natural world, always seeking to understand the deeper meanings behind animal behaviors, rather than just what was on the surface. The experience David had in the snowy wilderness, watching the wolves protect the moose, opened his eyes to something truly special about nature. It showed him a side that was both deeply mysterious and incredibly beautiful. The mystery came from not fully understanding why the wolves did what they did, what thoughts or feelings drove such an unusual act. It was a secret held close by the wild heart of the forest, but within that mystery was a profound beauty. The beauty of a pack of fierce animals choosing to guard a dying creature, ensuring its peaceful end. It was a quiet, powerful act of the wild, showing that nature's ways are not always simple or harsh. There was a kind of unspoken grace in their actions, a dedication that spoke volumes without a single word. This blend of mystery and beauty deeply moved David. It taught him that the natural world is not just about survival of the fittest, but also about complex interactions and unexpected connections. It showed him that there's a delicate balance and a hidden wisdom in the wild that we are only just beginning to understand. The wolves had given him a glimpse into a world far richer and more wonderful than he had ever imagined. A world where even predators could show a surprising form of reverence. David Meck's amazing discovery did more than just change how scientists thought about wolves. It helped everyone understand something bigger about all animals. His story showed people that every creature in nature, big or small, has an important role to play. It taught us that animals are not just things that live in the wild. They are living beings with their own unique ways and a depth we often don't see. By showing the world the wolves' unexpected behavior, David helped people realize that animals might have feelings and thoughts that are more complex than we imagine. It made people think about how animals interact with each other and their world, not just as simple machines, but as creatures with rich inner lives. This helped create more understanding and respect for all living things. His work encouraged people to care more about protecting animals and their homes. It made them think that if wolves, known as fierce predators, could show such patience and what seemed like compassion, then all animals deserve our attention and respect. David's story helped bridge a gap, showing us that the natural world is full of wonders and that every animal plays a vital part, often in surprising ways, reminding us to be kind and thoughtful about the creatures we share our planet with.